about the next part of her life, there was kind of this pileup of things that happened all together that just made me feel differently about her and what she could teach me. And it all started with this thing.
Elizabeth had some other realities.
Elizabeth's former assistant, Dennis Class, told me.
Did you read about Mrs. Schwartz?
No, who's that?
Well, I did not recruit Mrs. Schwartz for the seminar, but somebody did.
Dennis said Mrs. Schwartz was one of Elizabeth's patients. But then one day,
Mrs. Schwartz appeared to her in the hallway by her office and said something about, "You are called to this, keep it going."
The only problem is...
Mrs. Schwartz is dead.
Ain't that the weird part? I got chilled.
She said, "Would you write this down so that I can show people you were really here?" And Mrs. Schwartz wrote it down, and she signed Mrs. Schwartz.
Was it one of those, where you write a letter
reality
and be delivered after
Holy
your
crap,
death?
y'all.
Or did you...
No. Elizabeth told Dennis that she had received a letter from a dead lady. And Elizabeth's son, Ken, said it wasn't a one-time kind of deal. Like, around this time, Elizabeth started talking about these things she called her spooks.
You know, that word, I think, in particular, really set off the media. Elizabeth was talking about her spooks.
Other dead people, like Mr. Schwartz, but
the
with
damn
names like
spooks
Mario
got the
and
meteors
Billy.
going.
The only one that I remember her mentioned by name was Joseph.
Yeah, that's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, so
I really
it's
hope
a
that
little
this
bit funny,
stays.
but
I
it
don't know how
also was a
lots do.
turn that ended up taking her to a very dark
I
place.
usually get a lot more people on Instagram.
Hello?
I'm just gonna let these two guys tell it.
Don Schumacher.
And Tom France or France?
This is 90.3 out of I believe
My most
Birmingham.
recent job was as the
Anybody wants to
president
go
of the
listen?
National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization.
Both these guys spent their lives working and dying in grief, and they both got into this work because of Elizabeth.
It really changed my career dramatically meeting her.
Oh, absolutely. For me, life-changing.
They both went to Elizabeth's lectures after the book came out,
We were all enamored of her and thought she was fantastic.
and they kept going to these talks.
Enamored by
Don and Tom and 5 of their
gotta be
friends.
careful.
There were 7 of us.
They started calling themselves the Buffalo Seven,
We were sort of groupies.
and they were Elizabeth's biggest fans until...
The Buffalo 7!
Shocking the lie.
Elizabeth eventually got fired from the hospital in Chicago for reasons that are kind of unclear. But after that,
Because
she
they
bought
didn't
some
want me
land
talking.
out in
They
Southern
want me getting
California
this
so she could start a healing center.
The pushback.
She called it, which means Final Home of Peace. And I've heard from numerous people the center, it kind of looked like a motel.
Oh my god!
But the idea was people could come and take workshops with her to talk about dying and grieving. So in 1977, Don and Tom took a visit to Shantina Lida.
Welcome to Southern Metaphysical Communication Services.
A very far out experience.
So Tom and Don, they go with Elizabeth into this room with a couple dozen other people there.
So we all sat in chairs around the edge. And then the lights were turned down.
And it just got stranger and stranger and stranger. It really did.
People
Metaphysical.
began singing. "You Are My Sunshine" was Elizabeth's favorite song.
Then Tom said, through the dark, in the middle of the room, he saw these scarves
Scarves, they would light up,
shimmying and dancing around.
2 or 3 of them in different colors.
And then,
We were told that we would be approached by our spirit guide.
a moment later, Don says,
Your spirit guide approached you.
It was pitch black.
but Tom says you could tell that a person, like an actual person, was standing there.
A human being seemed to be there,
And that spirit guide would lead them into another room.
like a closet, because it was very small. They needed to be isolated and free of all other human contact during this time, we were told.
And they would talk to you about your past lives.
Who was your spirit guide? Do you remember? Or was it so dark you couldn't see them?
Well, you couldn't see them, but you could
You
absolutely feel them.
Wait, what does that mean, absolutely feel them? Just like you were like up close to them?
Oh,
No, you feel it.
oh no, you were holding them, like you were hugging them.
In Tom and Don's case, their spirit guide was clearly a woman.
And she had no clothes on.
No clothes
And
on.
it wasn't quite sexual.
Wait, but you hug them when they're talking?
Well, yes, you were hugging them while they were talking. Yeah, it was weird. It was very weird.
How long were you in the dark room for?
I would say 2 hours. The lights came on and I just know that it stops.
Oh god. Oh no.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like
That's
these
neat.
two guys flew across the country to California to just think deeply about working with dying people. And in this room, they just ended up having this weird, uncomfortable encounter that they didn't really even understand.
So it was hard. It was hard.
I
to go
don't even
through.
understand.
And it got worse. Like fairly soon after Elizabeth opened Shantinalaya, the man who ran these darkroom sessions, this guy named Jay Barham, was accused by numerous people of engaging in sexual misconduct in these dark rooms.
Oh no.
It's always the perverts
And
take over.
Elizabeth protected this guy, saying like he couldn't possibly have done this. He's one of the most gifted healers
Anybody
I know.
can do anything.
And she said that for over a year before she eventually fired him.
And everybody was shocked and dismayed, I think, when we got out of there, that we had been taken advantage of.
Did you have to pay to go?
I don't think so, but I don't recall.
So when you say taken advantage of, it's more like emotionally and psychologically, not like financially.
Oh, yeah. More than that Elizabeth was being taken advantage of.
A lot of people I talked to about this said
Not
that
anymore.
they don't think Elizabeth really knew what was going on, that she was manipulated by Jay just like everybody else. But I don't know, like I have a really hard time figuring out how to feel about this. And so did a lot of people. Like her husband divorced her. And at this point, Elizabeth left California and ran away to the small town in
I'm a
Virginia
runner.
to get another center out
In
of town.
Virginia!
The locals there didn't want her there. People protested. They sent her death threats. Someone killed her pet llama.
Oh damn.
And then eventually her house mysteriously burnt to the ground. She and Ken both suspected arson. And after that, she ended up having a series of strokes. So again, she moved back across the country to Arizona.
Psychic
And
attacks.
at this point, she kind of fell off the map
That's
for
what it was.
years.
I didn't know that then.
Until she herself started dying.
So the death and dying lady was getting ready to die.
All of a sudden, everybody
Now I'm
wanted to
getting
hear
ready to
from her again.
My name is Don Latin,
I got chills.
and I'm a journalist. So, yeah, I wrote an article about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which appeared on the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle on May 31st, 1997. Expert on death faces her own.
The whole world wanted to know.
This is the death and dying guru.
Now she
and
lives.
how is she dealing with it personally?
Don says it didn't look like she was handling it too well.
Elizabeth says she's ready to die, but she's not going gently.
And it was a pretty similar scene to the day Oprah was there. Like she's grouchily fielding questions about
Did you
I'm
go through
stubborn.
those stages yourself?
which stage of dying she was in.
She said, anger. I'm pissed.
I was angry, nothing but anger and
So
negative.
no denial for you.
No, are you kidding?
No.
Only
No denial.
And it was this massive train wreck of a story people couldn't look away from. Like
Massive
Elizabeth
train wreck of a
Kubler-Ross,
story!
the queen of dying, couldn't die in peace herself. And
I wanna
on top
live.
of that, during this time, she started working on another book called On Grief and Grieving, where she talked about those stages of death as stages of
I have
grief.
a book named
It
that.
was published after she died in the years following my own mom's death. And these stages,
The 5 stages of grief.
they took hold.
Grief often comes in 5 stages. Everyone just couldn't stop talking about that.
They were everywhere,
You're going to go through what we call the 5 stages of grief,
from Scrubs to
which are denial,
The Office,
According to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross,
Grey's Anatomy,
we all move through 5 distinct stages of grief.
Big Bird, don't you remember we told you?
to Sesame Street,
Mr. Hooper
The
died.
pattern.
even
There are 5 stages
Not stage.
movie trailers from this past summer.
It's a pattern.
And I know
Fish, I
pop
didn't know
culture
everything,
has a
yeah.
habit of doing this, stripping out all of the nuance of things. But it felt like on her way out the door, she leaned into the stages and then aimed them over at
Boom.
grief. And then really just the hardest part
So
to
loving.
watch for me was just the way she died. She was so angry and disgruntled. It was like she was saying, don't trust anything I taught you.
Bruh.
But then,
Sorry, guys.
Can I share my screen with you?
I mean, there's a lot.
yes, hold on. At one
It's
point,
that-
Ken
Oh,
my gosh, showed me all these pictures of her from her final years.
so there is Elizabeth on Halloween. She used to dress like E.T. on every Halloween.
I started seeing
Baby
all these
Yoda.
colors of that last part of her life. Like how she absolutely loved E.T.
Oh
She
my
would
God.
put her finger out when people came and say hello to them that way by touching fingers because she had such chronic pain that was like her little hello.
So here's my mother with her finger again. It shows that little finger
I couldn't
up.
swallow that because I just thought about when I was a kid and watched
Here's my
E.T. for
mom
the
on her
first time.
75th birthday. We took my mom to see her sisters one last time.
Makes sense.
Right, yeah. You know, here she's doing these wheelchair races. It's the big mix mash.
She looks really happy there. I don't know. I just like, she seems happier in her final years. I think more so than I thought. Because the articles you read that she was angry or she was depressed. But like these seem a little bit more complex.
You know, occasionally she had those days, but that's not who she is.
She was angry, but she wasn't just angry. I mean, I think it's important for people to understand that. I think the source of her anger was more frustration. She just wanted people to see her in all of her humanness and fallibility and accept who she really was.
This is Joanne Cacciatore, who was pretty much Elizabeth's
It's the
best
quantum
friend
jiggle.
during that time.
Yeah, we were very, very, very close. I would take her shopping. She loved shopping. She loved Costco.
She loves Costco? A woman after my own heart.
That's right. You know, we would sit around and watch Johnny Depp movies because she had a crush on Johnny Depp, and so did I. And she would get hundreds of letters every day from people. And she'd say, read me 3 letters or read me 10 letters.
Joanne told me that she and Elizabeth would have these really beautiful conversations about grief.
It's weird when you find out your life.
I could tell her, you know, like, oh my God, this happened today in class.
What a
or
great lunch.
This happened, I met a new bereaved family. This is what their doctor did, or this is what their counselor told them, you know. And she would go, oh, she would be outraged. She would just share my outrage. And I felt, you know, seen and heard. And she was one of the few people, you know, in the world at that time who really saw my own grief, my own deep grief for my child who died, and who held space for it in a way that was congruent with the depth and
That was
breadth
emotional. I didn't
of
do
the
that.
suffering.
She was still holding that
Y'all go look at my
space for
TikTok.
messiness
This
in a way
all-
that we weren't holding for her.
There's a perfect irony
No one
to
else.
criticizing Kubler-Ross for dying in a messy way when she was always trying to help us understand that messes are natural and that's okay and that's just part of the deal.
That's BJ Miller. He's a hospice and palliative care doctor.
She just sounds like she was just taking her own medicine and letting it rip, letting it fly.
Letting it rip.
Like that
Waving that
mix
freak
of
flag,
rage
baby.
and joy, sadness and bravery and shouting and listening. That mudslide of emotions, that was her final seminar for us.
Just be you. If you feel like screaming, you scream. If you feel like crying, you cry. Don't try to follow a textbook.
Don't try to follow a textbook.
And on
really
Tuesday,
hate nobody's
August
even on this
24th,
vlog.
2004,
Man,
Elizabeth
you are missing so much
died.
good stuff. History in the making, should they say.
I've been thinking a lot about
Ugh.
how
All right. 15
why I
bucks.
really like this story, and like I just I don't think I was ever able to
I can't
like
do no more.
bear witness to death when
Oh.
my mom died because of my age and because people were kind of like sheltering me from
6 years old is hard.
having to stare at it so deeply as a kid, which I think is probably like an act of compassion, like for sure. But when you walk
You
into the
learn more,
world
though.
and all you're left
what-
with is a silhouette of what happened to you and
My mom
also to
died.
the person you love, you don't have a bridge to living in
From
a world
cancer.
without them. And in the end, in both her life and death, Elizabeth really showed all of us the power of a rich, human, messy, maybe ugly, but also beautiful
I was gonna
picture
eat there for a second.
of death. But the real gift Elizabeth gave me was making me bump into.
Hello.
This is a real gift. You
All right.
gave. I bumped into you.
phone.
Yep.
And you're still here. Okay,
can hear you.
great. His name is
Oh my gosh.
Tom Riley.
I'm
I love people.
54-year-old father of 3, and I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
A very, very serious form of cancer he's dying
Yeah.
from.
The
So
best.
the time frame I think is like 20 months.
How come you have a podcast studio in your home? What was that for?
This is actually for what I'm going through right now. So I started doing this just a couple of, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. I call it F Cancer.
F Cancer.
FCancer.com.
Welcome to New Hollywood. F Cancer.
F Cancer.
He has these long interviews with his loved ones where they talk about whatever they want to talk about with his life and
See,
death.
all of us.
And
It's
then
not
they
just
get
one
to keep
person.
those interviews after he dies.
The whole approach
Just
that
because
I
I
had
shine
with,
a little brighter does
with
not
my
mean you'll
family
have
and
to
my
hate
friends
me.
is just kind of
You're just a
complete
big
honesty.
personality.
And when I first met Tom, I figured we'd talk once, maybe twice. But
We can
I'm
do another
wondering-
one of these.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you that because it just. But after that first call, we just kept talking. Again.
Hey, Rachel, it's Tom. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Had a CAT scan this morning, so.
How did it go? And again, this time work.
Totally down. Thursdays are always good.
Hello?
Hi, Tom. This is Rachel. And again, Happy New Year. Not really knowing why, but the two of us just kept feeling this pull to keep calling.
Tom Riley?
Hello, Tom Riley. This is Rachel. And to keep answering.
Hey, Rachel, good. How are you?
Good. I just settled into a new apartment, so I'm calling you. We talked nearly every week for 7 months now, and I think the reason is. Are there this is my last question, I promise. I'm going to take
I
one
blocked the rest of the afternoon. I really enjoyed this.
because Tom.
Kind of feel like we're on this journey together, so.
I kind of do too. I feel this feels so
We all are.
I mean, I didn't know. I felt weird even saying it.
Has let
Don't
me
feel
ask
weird.
the questions I wish I could have asked my mom.
I'm so glad you're
Because my
so
mom
mad.
was sick during 9/11, and I've always wondered what it's like to be dealing with this really serious
You will
illness at
find
a
your
time of a
people,
national
trust me, they
crisis.
come back.
I mean, a very real question for me at the beginning, because I had no reason to believe that I was going to even make it past,
You'll
Halloween.
find them again.
Was,
Your mom.
oh God, I'm not even going to get to see the election. And that was
past
actually,
lives, they be
probably
loving.
in the top 10 things that I thought of in the first, hours of kind of facing it. Was like I want to see what the next iPhone looks like.
Wow. Well, I want to see the next
I
iPhone.
like the bad
No
of
offense.
chemo.
I guess
physically,
I
what
don't see
is
the
that like?
material.
Oh, sure. It feels
I'd want
like
to see the next
your
sunrise looks
arms
like,
weigh 100 pounds
But that's
each,
what I enjoy. So to each
without
their own.
anything in them. And some of it's mental, like a boredom coupled with some feeling that you're not supposed to be feeling this right now.
Boredom is not a word that I would have
I know.
put in that sentence. So tell me more about the boredom.
It's the way it felt, though. So you can look forward right now, Rachel, and you can say, I've got to get this story done on deadline. And I've got this weird story with Tom that might be 3 months away or 6 months away or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But right, that's just life. You're balancing things that are near term, short term, long term, big pressure, no pressure, all that stuff. And I have virtually none of that right now. I feel like I outlived myself on some level.
What does that mean? What do you mean you're outliving yourself?
And we'll make jokes
Already
about
doing
playing
it.
the C card because, we were trying to get a reservation at something. I'm like, tell him your dad has stage 4 cancer. And sometimes it actually works.
Hey, if you got it, flaunt it. It has to be good for something.
Well, yeah.
Do you think that amount of acceptance is ever hard for your family? Like, do you think they're like, I don't want you to accept this death so much, and I don't want to feel that it is so imminent and real?
Totally. Not with everybody, not all the time. And yes, I actually just got feedback from my kids through family counseling that
I'm going to jump on Instagram
spending
because
too
I
much
get more
time
people over
trying to
there.
teach them.
Bye, y'all.
Wait, really?
And,